Hi guys, happy Saturday. I'm just popping on to record our next 3 chapters in the tale of Despereaux. We are picking up with chapter 25, A Vicious Cycle. Megarry-Sal called the man who purchased her uncle, as he said she must. And also, as he said she must, Meg tended Uncle's sheep and cooked Uncle's food and scrubbed Uncle's kettle. She did all of this without a word of thanks or praise from the man himself. Another unfortunate fact of life with Uncle was that he very much liked giving Meg what he referred to as a good clout to the ear. In fairness to Uncle, it must be reported that he did always inquire whether or not Meg was interested in receiving the clout. Their daily exchanges went something like this. Uncle: I thought I told you to clean the kettle. Meg: I cleaned it, Uncle. I cleaned it good. Uncle: Ah, it's filthy. You'll have to be punished, won't ye? Meg: Gore: Uncle, I cleaned the kettle. Uncle: Are ye saying that I'm a liar, girl? Meg: No, Uncle. Uncle: Do ye want a good clout to the ear then? Meg: No, thank you, Uncle, I don't. Alas, Uncle seemed to be as entirely unconcerned with what Meg wanted as her mother and father had been. The discussed clout to the ear was always delivered. Delivered, I am afraid, with a great deal of enthusiasm on Uncle's part, and received with absolutely no enthusiasm at all on the part of Meg. These clouts were alarmingly frequent, and Uncle was scrupulously fair in paying attention to both the right and left ear of Megarry-Sal. So it was that after a time that young Meg's ears came to resemble not so much ears as pieces of cauliflower stuck to either side of her head, and they became about as useful to her as pieces of cauliflower. That is to say that they all but ceased their functioning as ears. Words for Meg lost their sharp edges, and then they lost their edges altogether and became blurry, blankety things that she had a great deal of trouble making any sense out of at all. The less Meg heard, the less she understood. The less she understood, the more things she did wrong, and the more things she did wrong, the more clouts to the ear she received, and the less she heard. That is what is known as a vicious cycle, and Megarry-Sal was right in the center of it, which is not, reader, where anybody would want to be. But then, as you know, what Megarry-Sal wanted had never been much of a concern to anyone. Chapter 26, Royalty. When Meg turned 7 years old, there was no cake, no celebration, no singing, no present, no acknowledgement of her birthday at all, other than Meg saying, Uncle, today I am 7 years old, and Uncle saying in return, Did I ask ye how old you were today? Get out of my face before I give ye a good clout to the ear. A few hours after receiving her birthday clout to the ear, Meg was out in the field with Uncle's sheep when she saw something glittering and glowing on the horizon. She thought for a moment that it was the sun, but she turned and saw that the sun was in the west, where it should be, sinking to join the earth. This thing that shone so brightly was something else. Meg stood in the field and shaded her eyes with her left hand and watched the brilliant light draw closer and closer and closer until it revealed itself to be King Philip and his queen Rosemary and their daughter, the young Princess P. The royal family was surrounded by knights in shining armor and horses in shining armor, and atop each member of the royal family's head there was a golden crown. And they were all, the king and the queen and the princess, dressed in robes decorated with jewels and sequins that glittered and glowed and captured the light of the setting sun and reflected it back. Gore, breathed Meg. The Princess P was riding on a white horse that picked up its legs very high and set them down very daintily. The P saw Meg standing and staring, and she raised a hand to her. Hello, the Princess P called out merrily. Hello, and she waved her hand again. Meg did not wave back. Instead, she stood and watched. Open mouthed as the perfect, beautiful family passed her by. Papa, called the princess to the king, what is wrong with this girl? She will not wave to me. Never mind, said the king. It is of no consequence, my dear. But I am a princess, and I wave to her. She should wave back. Meg, for her part, continued to stare. Looking at the royal family had awakened some deep and slumbering need in her. It was as if a small candle had been lit in her interior, sparked to life by the brilliance of the king and the queen and the princess. For the first time in her life, reader, Meg hoped. And hope is like love, a ridiculous, wonderful, powerful thing. Meg tried to name the strange emotion. She put a hand up to touch one of her aching ears, and she realized that the feeling she was experiencing, the hope blooming inside of her, felt exactly the exact opposite of a good clout. She smiled and took her hand away from her ear. She waved to the princess. Today is my birthday, Mig called out, but the king and the queen and the princess were now too far away to reach her. Today, shouted Mig, I am 7 years old. Chapter 27, A Wish. That night, in the small dark hut that she had shared with Uncle and the sheep, Mig tried to speak of what she had seen. Uncle, she said, I saw some human stars today. How's that? I saw them all glittering and glowing, and there was a little princess wearing her own crown and riding on a little white tippy-toed horse. What are ye going on about? Said Uncle. I saw a king and a queen and an itty-bitty princess, shouted Mig. So? Shouted Uncle back. I would like, said Mig shyly. I wish to be one of them princesses. Har, laughed Uncle. Har, an ugly, dumb thing like you? You ain't even worth the enormous lot I paid for you. Don't I wish every night that I had back that good hen and that red tablecloth in place of you? He did not wait for Mig to guess the answer to this question. I do, he said. I wish it every night. That tablecloth was the color of blood. That hen could lay eggs like nobody's business. I want to be a princess, said Mig. I want to wear a crown. A crown? Uncle laughed. She wants to wear a crown. He laughed harder. He took the empty kettle and put it atop his head. Look at me, he said. I'm a king. See my crown? I'm a king just like I always wanted to be. I'm a king because I want to be one. He danced around the hut with the kettle on his head. He laughed until he cried. And then he stopped dancing and took the kettle from his head and looked at Mig and said, Do ye want a good clout to the ear for such nonsense? No, thank you, Uncle, said Mig, but she got one anyway. Look here, said Uncle after the clout had been delivered. We will hear no more talk of princesses. Besides, whoever asked you what you wanted in this world, girl? The answer to that question, reader, as you well know, was absolutely no one. And that is the end of chapter 27.